From ancient scrolls to modern classics, welcome to Whispers of Japanese Tales.
Run, Melos by Osamu Dazai. Melos was furious. He resolved firmly that he must overthrow the tyrannical and wicked king. Melos, however, knew nothing about politics. He was a shepherd from a rural village, living a simple life playing the flute and tending sheep. Yet, he was exceptionally sensitive to acts of evil. Early that morning, Melos had left his village, traversing fields and mountains, and finally arrived at the city of Syracuse, 10 ri, approximately 40 kilometers, away. Melos had neither parents nor a wife. He lived with his shy 16-year-old younger sister. This sister was soon to be wed to an upright shepherd from their village, and the wedding ceremony was fast approaching. Thus, Melos had come all the way to the city to purchase the bridal garments and banquet feast for the celebration. After collecting the necessary items, he strolled leisurely along the main streets of the city. Melos also had a childhood friend, Solanantius, who now worked as a stonemason in Syracuse. Melos planned to visit him next. Since it had been a long time since they last met, Melos was looking forward to visiting his friend. However, as he walked through the streets, he began to feel uneasy about the city's atmosphere. It was eerily quiet. While it was natural for the city to be dark after nightfall, there was a strange sense of desolation that went beyond the mere absence of daylight. The entire city seemed unnaturally somber. Even Melos, normally carefree and optimistic, started to feel a growing sense of unease. He stopped a young man on the street and asked if something had happened. "When I visited this city 2 years ago, people sang even at night, and the city was lively," he explained. But the young man simply shook his head and said nothing. Melos continued walking until he encountered an old man. This time, he asked with more urgency, his voice firm and demanding. Yet, the old man remained silent. Frustrated, Melos grabbed the old man by the shoulders, shaking him as he repeated his questions, desperate to understand what was wrong. The old man, glancing cautiously around, finally whispered a few words in reply. "The king kills people. Why does he kill them?" Melos demanded. "He claims they harbor treachery in their hearts, but no one truly has such intentions." "How many people has he killed?" "Many. First, the king's brother-in-law. Then, his own heir. After that, his sister. Then his sister's child. Next, the queen. And finally, the wise minister Alexis." "What a shocking tale. Has the king lost his sanity?" "No, he has not gone mad. He simply cannot bring himself to trust others. Lately, he has grown suspicious even of his loyal subjects. Those who live even slightly extravagantly are ordered to provide a hostage. If they refuse, they are crucified and executed. Today alone, 6 people were killed." Hearing this, Melos became furious. What an appalling king! Such a man cannot be allowed to live. Melos was a straightforward man. Without overthinking, he stormed toward the royal castle, still carrying the items he had purchased. Melos was immediately apprehended by patrolling guards. Upon searching him, they found a dagger in his possession, which caused a great commotion. He was promptly brought before the king. "What did you intend to do with this dagger? Speak." The tyrant Dionysius questioned him calmly but with an imposing air of authority. His face was pale, and the deep wrinkles etched into his brow gave him a stern appearance. "I intended to save the city from the hands of a tyrant," Melos replied boldly, without any sign of fear. "You? Save the city?" The king smirked with a faint trace of pity. "What a fool you are. You could never understand my loneliness." "Enough," Melos retorted angrily. "To doubt the hearts of others is the most disgraceful of vices. You even distrust the loyalty of your own people." "It was you people who taught me that suspicion is the only reasonable mindset," the king replied, his voice calm but laced with resignation. "The hearts of men are unreliable. Humans are nothing but beings driven by selfish desires. One must not trust them." He sighed heavily, his tone softening. "I too desire peace, you know." "For what purpose?" Melos shot back with a derisive laugh. "To protect your own position? Innocent people killed in the name of peace? What kind of peace is that?" "Silence, wretch." The king abruptly lifted his head, his voice cutting. "Anyone can speak of purity and virtue, but I can see through the depths of a person's heart. Even you, when tied to the cross, will weep and beg for forgiveness, but I will not listen." "Ah, the king is clever. Go ahead and bask in your arrogance," Melos retorted. "I am fully prepared to die. I will never plead for my life." "However," he faltered momentarily, dropping his gaze to the floor, his voice softening. "However, if your majesty intends to show mercy, grant me 3 days before my execution. I have a younger sister, my only family, and I wish to see her married. Allow me 3 days to return to my village, hold the wedding, and I will come back without fail." "Ridiculous," the king sneered, his laughter hoarse and bitter. "What absurd lies you tell. Do you expect me to believe that a bird I set free will fly back into the cage? It will. I will return, Melos insisted desperately, his conviction unwavering. I will keep my promise. Please grant me 3 days. My sister is waiting for my return, Melos pleaded earnestly. If you cannot trust me, then fine. In this city, there is a stonemason named Salanantius. He is my dearest friend. I will leave him here as a hostage. If I fail to return by sundown on the 3rd day, you may strangle him to death. I beg you, do this. The king listened and smiled cruelly to himself, his sadistic thoughts taking pleasure in the proposition. How bold this fool is, he mused. He won't return, of course, but pretending to believe him and letting him go will be amusing. Then, on the 3rd day, I'll execute his friend instead. That will teach these so-called honest men a lesson. I'll show them all how untrustworthy humanity truly is. I'll look mournful and proclaim my sorrow while crucifying the stand-in. Very well, the king declared aloud. I grant your request. Call this substitute of yours. Return by sundown on the 3rd day. If you are late, I will surely kill him. In fact, I dare you, arrive just a little late, and I will pardon you for eternity. What are you saying? Melos asked, baffled by the king's words. Ha! If your life is truly dear to you, then come late. I already know the truth of your heart, the king said mockingly. Melos was filled with frustration, stamping his feet in silent fury. He no longer wanted to speak. Late that night, Salanantius, his childhood friend, was summoned to the royal castle. In the presence of the tyrant Dionysius, the two dear friends met for the first time in 2 years. Melos explained everything to Salanantius, laying bare the dire situation. Without a word, Salanantius nodded solemnly and embraced Melos tightly. Between true friends, nothing more needed to be said. Salanantius was bound in ropes, and Melos immediately set off on his journey. It was early summer, and the sky was adorned with countless stars. Melos did not sleep a wink that night, racing down the Tenri road with relentless determination. He arrived at his village the following morning, as the sun had already risen high. The villagers were out in the fields, beginning their day's work. Melos's 16-year-old sister was tending the flock of sheep in his place that day. She was startled to see her brother staggering toward her, utterly exhausted. Rushing over, she bombarded him with worried questions. It's nothing, Melos replied, forcing himself to smile despite his weariness. I have unfinished business in the city and must return soon. Tomorrow, we'll hold your wedding. It's better to have it sooner, Melos declared. His sister blushed deeply. Are you happy? I've even brought beautiful wedding garments for you. Now, go and tell the villagers. Let them know that the wedding is tomorrow, he instructed. Melos then staggered away, returning to their home to decorate the altar for the gods, prepare the banquet, and make all the necessary arrangements for the celebration. Not long after, he collapsed onto his bed, falling into an overwhelmingly deep sleep, his exhaustion rendering him almost lifeless. When he awoke, it was already night. Rising immediately, Melos went to visit the groom's house. There, he explained that certain circumstances required the wedding to be held the next day and pleaded for their cooperation. The shepherd, his future brother-in-law, was taken aback. That's impossible, he protested. We're not prepared for such short notice. Please wait until the grape harvest season. Melos insisted. I cannot wait. Please, let the wedding be tomorrow, pressing the groom to agree. However, the shepherd was equally stubborn and refused to concede easily. The two argued until dawn, but eventually, Melos managed to soothe, persuade, and finally convince the groom. The wedding took place at midday. As the bride and groom completed their vows to the gods, dark clouds suddenly filled the sky. Raindrops began to fall, and soon, a torrential downpour followed, with rain heavy enough to resemble flowing axles. The villagers attending the feast felt a sense of unease at the ominous weather, yet they kept their spirits high. Packed into a small house, they endured the stifling heat and humidity, singing cheerfully and clapping their hands to maintain the celebratory mood. Melos, too, was filled with joy, his face glowing with happiness. For a moment, he even forgot about his solemn promise to the king. As the banquet carried on into the evening, the atmosphere became increasingly lively and vibrant, with no one giving the storm outside a second thought. At that moment, Melos wished deeply that he could remain there forever. He longed to spend his life with these good-hearted people, cherishing their warmth and joy. But he knew his life was no longer his own. It belonged to his promise. This realization pierced his heart. Summoning all his willpower, Melos steeled himself and resolved to leave. There's still plenty of time until sunset tomorrow, Melos thought to himself. I'll take a short nap and leave right after. By then, the rain will probably have eased. Deep down, he wanted to linger in the house for as long as he could. Even a man like Melos was not immune to feelings of attachment. Approaching the bride, who seemed lost in blissful euphoria from the day's joy, Melos spoke gently. Congratulations. I'm exhausted, so please excuse me. I need to rest a little. Once I wake up, I'll head to the city. I have something important to take care of. But don't feel lonely without me. You now have a kind husband by your side. You know your brother despises two things above all else: doubting others and telling lies. You must never harbor secrets from your husband, no matter what. That's all I want to say to you. Remember, your brother is likely a great man, so hold on to that pride. The bride, still in a dreamlike state, nodded in agreement. Melos then turned to the groom, patting him on the shoulder. We were both unprepared, weren't we? My family's treasures are nothing more than my sister and our sheep. There's nothing else. I'll give it all to you. And one more thing. Be proud of becoming Melos's brother-in-law. The groom, nervously wringing his hands, gave a bashful smile. Melos smiled, bowing slightly to the villagers before leaving the banquet. He slipped into the sheep pen and fell into a deep, death-like sleep. When he awoke, it was the pale light of dawn the next day. Melos sprang to his feet, exclaiming, "By the gods, have I overslept?" But then he reassured himself, "No, there's still plenty of time. If I set out right away, I'll easily make it before the appointed hour." Today, he resolved, he would show the king the truth of human integrity. He would climb the scaffold with a smile, proving to the tyrant that trust and loyalty still existed in the world. Calmly, Melos began to prepare himself. The rain had lessened, now falling as a light drizzle. Once he was ready, he stretched his arms wide and took a deep breath. Then, with a powerful burst of energy, he dashed into the rain like an arrow loosed from a bow. I will die tonight. I run to my death. I run to save the life of my friend, my substitute. I run to shatter the king's cunning deceit. I must run, and in the end, I will be killed. Protect your honor, even in youth. Farewell, my homeland. Young Melos felt the weight of his mission deeply. Several times, he almost stopped in his tracks, but each time, he shouted, "Ay!" to scold himself and push forward. Leaving the village, he crossed the fields, passed through the forest, and reached the neighboring village. By then, the rain had stopped. The sun had risen high, and the day was beginning to grow uncomfortably hot. Melos wiped the sweat from his brow with his fist and thought, I've come far enough, everything will be fine now. He no longer felt any lingering attachment to his homeland. His sister would surely lead a happy life with her new husband. I have no regrets left. All that matters is reaching the royal castle. As long as I make it there, it will be enough. There's no need to rush. Let's take it easy. With that, Melos regained his usual carefree attitude. He began singing a cheerful tune in a strong voice as he strolled leisurely along. He walked 2 ri, then 3, covering half the total distance when disaster struck unexpectedly. Melos's steps halted abruptly. Ahead of him, a river stretched wide and furious. The heavy rain from the previous day had caused the mountain springs to flood, creating a torrential current. The powerful surge had completely destroyed the bridge, shattering its wooden beams into countless fragments that were now swept downstream by the raging waters, thundering as they went. Melos stood in stunned silence, paralyzed by the sight before him. He glanced around desperately, shouting at the top of his lungs, but all the tethered boats had been swept away by the raging waters, leaving no trace. The ferryman, too, was nowhere to be seen. The river had swollen even further, transforming into an ocean-like expanse of churning waves. Collapsing to his knees on the riverbank, Melos wept like a child, raising his hands toward the heavens in fervent prayer to Zeus. Oh, please, calm this raging torrent. Time slips away with every moment. The sun has already reached its zenith. If I cannot reach the castle before it sets, my dear friend will die because of me. The violent current seemed to mock Melos's pleas, roaring louder and surging more fiercely. Waves swallowed and rolled over one another, rising higher and higher, as time slipped mercilessly away. At last, Melos steeled himself. There was no choice but to swim across. Oh gods, bear witness. Now is the time to prove the greatness of love and loyalty, stronger than even this raging torrent. With that, Melos leapt into the turbulent river. The icy water engulfed him, and he began his desperate struggle against the monstrous waves, thrashing and writhing like 100 serpents. With every ounce of strength he possessed, Melos poured his energy into his arms, fighting against the swirling, dragging torrent. This is nothing, he told himself, thrashing wildly through the chaotic waves, a human figure of unstoppable determination. Perhaps even the gods were moved by his desperate struggle, for they finally showed him mercy. Though carried downstream, he managed to grab hold of a tree trunk on the opposite bank and cling to it with all his might. Thank the gods, Melos shuddered like a horse shaking off water, then immediately pressed forward. Not a single moment could be wasted. The sun was already dipping toward the western horizon. Panting heavily, he began climbing the mountain pass. Step by step, he pushed himself upward, At last, he reached the summit and allowed himself a brief sigh of relief. But just then, a band of mountain bandits suddenly leapt out before him. "Stop! What do you want?" "I must reach the royal castle before the sun sets." "Let me go." "Not so fast. Leave everything you have with us." "I have nothing but my life. And even that one life, I am about to give to the king." "Then it's your life we want." "So, you've been ordered by the king to ambush me here, haven't you?" The mountain bandits said nothing but raised their clubs in unison. Melos swiftly ducked, bending his body like a bird in flight, and lunged at the nearest bandit. Seizing the club from him, he shouted, "Forgive me, but this is for justice." With a fierce blow, he struck down 3 of the bandits in an instant. Taking advantage of the momentary hesitation of the others, Melos dashed off, running down the mountain pass as fast as he could. Melos raced down the mountain pass in a single burst of energy, but exhaustion soon caught up with him. The blazing afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and Melos felt wave after wave of dizziness. "This cannot happen," he told himself, forcing his legs forward step by staggering step. But at last, his knees buckled, and he collapsed to the ground, unable to rise. Looking up to the heavens, he broke into tears of frustration and despair. "Oh, Melos, you swam through the raging torrent, struck down 3 bandits, and dashed here like a god of speed. True hero, Melos. And yet now, at this moment, you are brought to a standstill by sheer exhaustion. How pitiful! Your beloved friend trusted you with his life, and now he will be killed because of that faith. You are a wretched betrayer of trust, the very embodiment of what the king believes humanity to be." Melos tried to chastise himself, but his entire body had gone limp. He could not move forward, not even as much as a crawling worm. Melos flung himself onto the grass by the roadside. Physical exhaustion had drained his spirit as well. A sense of despair, unbefitting a hero, began to creep into his heart like a shadow. What does it matter anymore? He thought bitterly. I've done everything I could. I had not the slightest intention of breaking my promise. The gods are my witnesses. I've given everything. I've run until I could run no more. I am no betrayer of trust. Oh, if only I could split open my chest and show them my beating heart, crimson with love and loyalty. If only they could see that this heart of mine runs on nothing but the blood of devotion and truth. But now, at this critical moment, my strength has failed me. My will has faltered. What an unfortunate man I am. Surely, I will be mocked. My family will be mocked. And I have deceived my friend. Melos lay sprawled on the grassy roadside. Physical exhaustion had drained his spirit, and a despondency unbecoming of a hero began to take root in the corners of his heart. What does it matter anymore? He thought, bitterness creeping in. I've tried so hard. Never once did I have even the slightest intention of breaking my promise. The gods themselves know. I've done everything I could. I've run until I could no longer move. I am not a traitor. Oh, if only I could tear open my chest and show them my heart, crimson with love and loyalty. If only they could see that this heart beats solely on the blood of devotion and truth. But now, at this crucial moment, I am spent. My strength is gone. I am, truly, a most unfortunate man. I will surely be mocked. My family will be mocked. And I have betrayed my friend. To collapse halfway is no better than never trying at all. Perhaps this is my fate. Selenentius, forgive me, he whispered. You always believed in me. I never intended to deceive you. We were truly the best of friends. Not once did a shadow of doubt pass between us. Even now, you must be waiting for me. Trusting in me. Yes, you're waiting. Thank you, Selenentius. Thank you for believing in me. That thought alone is unbearable. Friendship, founded on trust, is the greatest treasure in this world. Selenentius, I ran for you. I never meant to betray you. Please, believe me. I have rushed here as fast as I could. I crossed the raging river. I slipped through the ring of bandits and charged down the mountain pass in one breath. Only I could have done it. But now, don't ask more of me. Leave me be. It doesn't matter anymore. I have failed. I am pathetic. Laugh at me. The king whispered to me, come a little late. He promised that if I were late, he would kill my substitute and spare my life. I despise the king's cowardice. But now, it seems I am doing exactly as he said. I will arrive late. The king will smirk, thinking himself victorious, and release me without consequence. If that happens, I will suffer a fate worse than death. I will become an eternal traitor, the most dishonorable creature alive. Selenentius, I will die too. Let me die with you. You are the only one who will still believe in me. Or is even that just my self-righteousness? Melos questioned himself. Perhaps I should just live on as a scoundrel. Why not? My home is in the village. My sheep are there. My sister and her husband surely wouldn't cast me out. Justice, loyalty, love, when you think about it, aren't they all meaningless? To kill others so you can survive, That's the law of the human world, isn't it? Ah, everything is ridiculous. I am a despicable traitor. Do as you please with me. It doesn't matter anymore. I'm finished. With that, Melos flung out his arms and legs, surrendering to exhaustion. Slowly, he drifted into a drowsy, restless sleep. Suddenly, the gentle sound of flowing water reached Melos's ears. He lifted his head slightly, holding his breath as he strained to listen. The sound seemed to come from right at his feet. Unsteadily, he rose and looked around. From a crack in the rock, clear water was bubbling up, trickling forth with a soft, murmuring whisper. Drawn to the spring as if by some invisible force, Melos bent down. He cupped his hands and drank deeply. A long sigh escaped him, and it felt as though he had awoken from a dream. I can walk. I must go. With his body regaining strength, even a faint glimmer of hope began to flicker within him. It was the hope of fulfilling his duty, the hope of preserving his honor through self-sacrifice. The setting sun cast its crimson light upon the trees, making their leaves and branches blaze as if aflame. There was still time before sunset. Someone is waiting for me. Someone who harbors no doubt, quietly trusting in me, filled with expectation. I am believed in. My life is of no consequence. Offering my death as an apology, that would be far too easy. No, I must repay that trust. That is my only task now. Run, Melos. I am trusted. I am trusted. The devil's whisper from earlier. No, that was just a dream. A bad dream. Forget it. When the body is exhausted, such nightmares sometimes arise. Melos, that was not your shame. You are still a true hero. See? You've risen again and can run once more. What a blessing. I can die as a man of justice. Ah, the sun is setting. It sinks lower and lower. Wait for me, Zeus. I have been an honest man since the day I was born. Let me die as an honest man. Pushing past travelers, leaping over obstacles, Melos ran like a black wind. He sprinted through the middle of a feast being held on an open field, startling the revelers, kicking dogs aside, vaulting over streams, and running 10 times faster than the steadily sinking sun. In a fleeting moment, he passed a group of travelers and overheard a chilling fragment of their conversation. By now, that man must be on the cross. Ah, that man. For that man, I am running like this now. He must not die. Hurry, Melos. You must not be late. Let him see, once and for all, the power of love and loyalty. Melos no longer cared about appearances. He was nearly naked now, his clothing in tatters. He could hardly breathe, and blood spurted from his mouth 2-3 times. In the distance, he caught sight of it, the tower of the city of Syracuse, small but visible on the horizon. The tower shimmered in the light of the setting sun, a beacon of hope and urgency. Ah, Melos! A groaning voice reached him, carried on the wind. Who's there? Melos asked, his voice strained, even as he continued to run. It is I, Philostratus. I am a disciple of your friend, Selenentius, the young stonemason called out as he ran behind Melos. It's no use anymore. It's too late. Please stop running. You cannot save him now. No, the sun hasn't set yet, Melos shouted back. At this very moment, he is being executed. Ah, you were too late. If only you had been just a little faster. I curse this fate. No, the sun hasn't set yet, Melos cried, his heart on the verge of breaking as he fixed his gaze on the enormous, red sun sinking ever lower. He knew he had no choice but to keep running. Please, stop. Stop running. Now your own life is what matters most. Even as he was led to the gallows, Selenentius believed in you. He remained calm despite the king's taunts, answering only, Melos will come. He held steadfast to that belief. That's why I run, Melos bellowed, his voice brimming with emotion. Because he believes in me, I run. Whether I make it in time or not doesn't matter. Lives don't matter. I'm running for something far greater, something terrifyingly immense. Follow me, Philostratus. Ah, have you gone mad? Very well then. Run as fast as you can. Who knows? Perhaps you might just make it in time. Run. No need for further words. The sun had not yet set. Mustering every ounce of strength left in his body, Melos ran. His mind was blank, completely emptied. He thought of nothing. He was simply dragged forward by an incomprehensible, immense force. The sun wavered at the horizon, sinking ever lower. Just as the last fragment of its light was about to disappear, Melos stormed into the execution grounds like a raging wind. He had made it. Stop! Do not kill that man. He tried to shout to the gathered crowd. Melos has returned, just as promised. I am here. But his throat was hoarse and torn from exhaustion, and only a faint, rasping whisper escaped his lips. None in the crowd noticed his arrival. Not a single person realized he was there. The execution stake stood tall, and Selenentius, bound with ropes, was slowly being hoisted upward. Melos saw this and summoned the last of his courage. Just as he had swum through the raging torrent, he pushed through the crowd, parting them with his outstretched arms. "It's me, executioner," he rasped, his hoarse voice shouting with all its might. "The one to be killed is me. I am Melos, the man who took him as a hostage. I am here." He climbed onto the scaffold, and, reaching the hoisted body of his friend, clung desperately to Selenantius's legs. The crowd erupted in astonishment. Cries of admiration and pleas for forgiveness rang out from every corner. At last, Selenantius's ropes were cut, and he was freed. "Selenantius," Melos said, tears welling in his eyes, strike my cheek with all your strength. On my journey, I once had a wicked dream. If you do not strike me, I am unworthy even to embrace you as a friend. Strike me." Selenantius, understanding everything, nodded silently. Then, with a resounding strike that echoed throughout the execution grounds, he slapped Melos's right cheek. Afterward, he smiled gently and said, "Melos, strike me. Strike my cheek just as loudly. During these 3 days, there was a single moment when I briefly doubted you. For the first time in my life, I doubted you. If you do not strike me, I cannot embrace you as a friend." Melos, with all the strength in his arm, struck Selenantius's cheek. "Thank you, my friend," they both said in unison, before embracing each other tightly. Overwhelmed, they broke into sobs, crying aloud with tears of joy and relief. From within the crowd, the sound of quiet sobbing could be heard. Behind the gathering, the tyrant Dionysius watched Melos and Selenantius intently. After a moment, he approached them quietly, his face flushed, and spoke. "Your wish has been granted. You have won over my heart. Faith and loyalty are not empty illusions. I ask of you, please, let me join you. Please, allow me to be one of your companions." A thunderous cheer erupted from the crowd. "Long live the king! Long live the king!" Amid the commotion, a young girl stepped forward and offered a crimson cloak to Melos. He hesitated, unsure of what to do, until Selenantius, ever the thoughtful friend, leaned in and whispered with a smile. "Melos, you're practically naked. Quickly, put on the cloak. This sweet girl must be so embarrassed to see your bare body exposed to everyone." The hero turned bright red with embarrassment.
Until we meet again, may the stories of Japan inspire your days. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales.